Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're all able to hear us okay. My name is Stephen O'Reilly, and I'm the National Delegate and National Contact Point here in Ireland for ICT in the Horizon 2020 programme. So you're all very welcome to this afternoon's webinar on Next Generation Internet, Open Calls for Funding. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Next Generation Internet already, but it's really an initiative set up by the European Commission looking about developing the Internet of the future. Okay, it's all about an Internet that is human-centric and has the required levels of privacy and security and trust that we as a community will need in the future Internet. The Next Generation Internet initiative was launched, I suppose, in late 2016 by the Commission. It's got a fairly ambitious vision, and it requires the involvement of the best researchers and innovators that we have to address technological opportunities arising from cross-links and advances in research fields ranging from things like network infrastructures, platforms, application domains, social innovation, and so on. Within Next Generation Internet, the Commission has fundamentally changed its approach to supporting R&D, as well as supporting what I would call the traditional style of R&D projects. So within NGI, the Commission have introduced this notion of Cascade Funding, or financial support to third parties. So in this type of funding, a significant percentage of the funding going to particular projects is ring-fenced for open calls, where the funding is further distributed to third parties such as SMEs and so on, in smaller tranches. And that's what you're going to hear about today. So you're going to hear about 4 such open calls that are redistributing Commission money in areas like privacy and trust enhancing technologies, decentralized technologies, and next generation search and discovery. The agenda, I'm sure you've all seen the agenda already. So I'm just doing a very quick welcome and introduction here. Jim Clarke from Waterford IT is going to follow up with details on some of the open calls. We also have Ola Skalska from Fundingbox here in Ireland, who's going to talk about one of the projects that she's involved with. There will be an opportunity for pitches from the audience as well, very short pitches at the end of this session. We'll have a Q&A session and then a final wrap up by Jim. I should say that the webinar is being recorded and will be made available afterwards. If you do have any queries at any stage, please raise your hand or use the chat function that you can see in the webinar toolbox. Okay, so without further ado, I will hand you over to Jim, who's going to tell us about the NGI open calls. Jim?
Okay, thank you very much, Stephen, for that opening. We're just going to change the slide set, but in the meantime, I'll just describe a little bit about the project that we're involved in, the SpeakNGI.eu project. We were one of the 3 so-called Pathfinder projects, which were helping to sort of build this NGI initiative over the last 18 months or so. And our responsibility was the consultation platform and knowledge base of the whole NGI initiative, and also stakeholder engagement, and having the stakeholders contribute to the definition of the different topics. The different topics falling within the NGI program. So as Stephen mentioned, there were 3 topics that were launched in the Work Program 2018 program: privacy and trust enhancing technologies, decentralized data governance, and the third one is discovery and identification technologies, or they refer to it more as search and discovery. So we felt it was a good time now because the open call projects are up and running. So we felt it was a good time now to run national seminars to get the people in the countries more involved in their native languages as well. To reach out to the, as Stephen said, they're trying to do things differently. So they're trying to reach out to the to the startups and the innovators that normally wouldn't participate to the EU programs due to the administrative burden and the time it takes to get involved. So with these open calls, it will ease that transition into into getting involved in these projects.
Sorry to interrupt you. Could you speak closer to the microphone because they are writing in chat that they can't hear you very well. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me better now? Is that better? I hope so.
Yes.
Okay. So the first part of the presentation, I'll go through the NGI open calls with the deadlines and some details. Then we will have Ola Skalska from Fundingbox, who's based here in Ireland, and she'll give a description of the application process, which is much easier than the usual research and innovation action type application. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Christina, do you have the screen?
Sarah, can you please go to the next slide?
I'll change it to my screen here. I have the slides here as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, can you see that?
Yes, that's
okay.
Good. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the funding is available for research and development of various next generation internet technologies and concepts that would make the internet more open, trusted, and secure. So, and the focus is on advanced research and innovation, the concepts and technologies linked to relevant use cases. So it has to be human-centric or user-centric that can be brought quickly to the market and to the society. And also focusing on applications and services that innovate without so much of a research component, which are not covered by this model. Okay, so next slide. So who is it for? It's for third parties, not necessarily consortia, but more like team-based or even single entities or even individuals can participate, coming from outstanding academic research groups, high-tech startups, and SMEs, and that are at work on specific topics, contributing to evolve to an internet that is more open, trusted, secure, and inclusive. Next slide. The open calls, as Stephen mentioned earlier, there's 3 NGI topics opened at the moment, and I'll go into the details in a moment. Under the privacy and trust enhancing technologies topic, there are 2 open calls. One is run by a project called NGI Pet, which I'll go into more detail in a moment. The second is NGI Trust Open Call, or the open call is for the NGI Trust Project. Under decentralized data governance, there's the Ledger project, and they have an open call running at the moment. And then under the search and discovery and identification technologies, there's the NGI Zero Discovery project. Okay, next slide. The deadlines for the open calls are the NGI Trust Open Call has a deadline of 30th of April, 2019. And The Ledger open call has a deadline of the same day, 30th of April 2019. Now these projects are running open calls on an annual basis. Then the other projects, the NGI Zero Discovery project has a deadline of 1st of April 2019, and NGI Zero PET has a deadline of the 1st of April 2019. However, these open calls are running on a bi-monthly basis, so every 2 months they will open a new call. So the first call they held was from December to the end of January, then from February to the end of April, and then so on. So they will keep having these open calls immediately following one another until the funding runs out. So in terms of the funding for these open calls, there's approximately 5.6 million euros per project, which is specifically dedicated to the funding of the third parties' projects. And so that equates to 80% of the overall budget of each of these projects. So there's quite a large amount of money for the open calls in these projects. Next slide, please. So the NGI Trust Project is specifically looking at the privacy and trust areas. So looking at the topics critical to building a human-centric internet. And the first call, it seeks to attract a broad mix of projects, including large number of early stage feasibility studies. And there's between 100,000 and 200,000 available for the different types of projects. And the website to get involved or get to the application for those is shown here. Okay, next slide, please. So it's looking at different areas in relation to technical innovation and privacy-enhancing technologies such as cryptography, federated identity, security and privacy for IoT, distributed ledgers, and privacy-enhancing data transports and data at rest, applications of artificial intelligence, machine learning, neural networks to serve the user interests, bootstrapping trust at the protocol level to maintain a decentralized internet infrastructure for the establishment of trust, privacy, and security between the end users and services, and also developing means for individuals to make more informed decisions on the relevance of information that they're asked to disclose when accessing and using the services. Next slide, please. The Ledger project is looking to fund 32 in total, so that would be, if I recall correctly, about 16 per year, I think. Human-centric innovators to develop minimum viable products and services in order to achieve new models that preserve citizen digital sovereignty, where the data is a common good owned by citizens and wealth created by data-driven platforms is equally distributed. So this, as I said before, falls under the decentralized data governance topic. So they will select 16 proposals in the verticals of health, economy, mobility, public services, energy and sustainability, and open innovation. And again, there's up to 200,000 euro available for the best-in-class innovators, and this again is sort of broken into different levels. So it wouldn't just be one project for 200,000. You would apply for something like 100,000, and then once you reach the MVP status that they want, then you can go for the next level of funding. The four different projects operate in slightly different modes in terms of the funding, so it's you really should read the details about each of them. For example, in the NGI Trust model, there is some requirement to bring in some venture capital as you move along the process in order to get the maximum amount of money. So you can find all of this information on their websites. Next slide, please. Then in terms of the types of teams that they're looking for in Ledger, so they're looking for a maximum or minimum of 1 and a maximum of 2 legal persons. It could be SME, research organization, foundation, with a team composed by at least 3 profiles, research developer, business development, or a minimum of 3 natural persons, at least a researcher, developer, and business development entrepreneur. And they must consist of 1 legal entity or at least 3 natural persons legally established in an EU member state or in associated countries. And then at some point, as I mentioned earlier, at some point in order to move on to the next level of funding, there is a requirement to move into a legal status. So even if you have the individuals participating, at some point they will have to become some sort of a legal entity to get the further tranche of funding. So the projects, or they call them technology transfer experiments, have to be based in research components relevant to the topic of privacy by design, distributed data governance, and consisting in development, test, and validation of technical and economic viability of minimum viable product, MVP, or service. Next slide, please. NGI Zero Discovery, which has a deadline the 1st of April. They're looking to give the grants to small and medium-sized teams. Also, they can also be individuals. They can be research centers. They can be startups, as I mentioned earlier, towards improving search and discovery in the next generation internet. So support for new ideas and core technologies. The project proposals funding is between 5,000 and 50,000 euros, with the potential to scale them up if there is proven potential. And the projects are judged on their technical merits, strategic relevance to the NGI, and overall value for money. It's based on the NLNet scheme, which has been running for many, many years in distributing third-party funding. So they're using this model that they've been using for many years. So the key objective is to deliver potential breakthrough contributions to the open internet, and all the scientific outcomes must be published as open access, and any software must be published under a recognized open source license in its entirety. And the website to get involved in this open call can be found here. And as I mentioned before, immediately on the first day of May, there will be another open call opening following this one. And it'll be open for a period of 2 months. Next slide, please. The NGI Zero PET project has the deadline of 1st of April as well. And again, it's similarly, the proposals are between 5,000 and 50,000 euros, with the potential to scale them up if there's proven potential. And and again, they follow the same open internet, open access, open source license, and the website is given there. And again, this is covering topics of in relation to privacy and trust enhancing technologies and the next generation internet. Next slide. Okay, so thank you, and I just would like to point out that if you would like to get more information on these topics themselves, please visit our consultation platform, and the website is here, and you'll be able to go through the different channels for each of those topics, and you'll be able to find some interesting discussions on the different topics, which could help you perhaps inspire you with some ideas for projects that could be submitted to these open calls. So next, we're going to ask our colleague from Fundingbox, Ola, and she will present the application process for that is used by Fundingbox. So it's the process that would be used for the Ledger project. So
yes, thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Just thank you, Jim. Thank you, Stephen. My name is Ola Skalska, and I'm working for Fundingbox. We are the coordinators of Ledger. So one disclaimer, I'm just going to show you the application process for Ledger. I'm sure every project is equally nice and easy to fill in, although I do not know the details of the others. So let me just tell you how to apply to Ledger and get up to this 200,000 euros. First of all, you obviously enter the website, and then you have two options. Whether you're gonna hit the main button that is at the bottom of the page, or you go through the link to the open calls. Once you're inside, and this is something that I can't stress enough, this is really important. Once you're inside, before pressing the apply button that you will see in the central location, please go and read the guides and documents. This is something that Jim mentioned before, and this is really, really important for you to understand the call, the scope, the rules, the regulations, the limits. So please start from this section before you start filling in the fields. And by filling in the fields, I mean that the system that we created is really simple to follow, and it's supposed to be an extremely intuitive and smooth experience for any applicant. So it's nothing, as you might remember, as applying for research grants or for any other European Commission projects. It's not a 70 pages application, it's just a few, and then you do it only online. You do not need to attach any documents at this stage. So this is done pretty quickly. So once you're inside the system, once you register, you press the apply button, you're being transferred to the gear that collects all the information regarding your proposal. Just a few important things. You can always add contributors to your proposal. So you may be working with a team of people with you. So please use the button add a contributor. And then, which is interesting, you can edit your proposal as many times as you need, even though it was already submitted and you're prior to the deadline, which means that the final document could be reopened and you can add additional information. And then the final version will be taken as a valid one. So in the form, you have 10 sections. 9 of them are obligatory, the ones with the stars. And we just need basic information at this stage. For us, we hire external experts, obviously. So for us and our experts, it's important that there is a potential idea that could be not only grown here within Ledger, but also afterwards, so that the project could be scaled. When it comes to legal information about your entity, your team, we don't need anything other than the website and the address. So no paper documents attached, no scans, no tax certificates. We're fine with basic info. When it comes to the project description, as you can see, only 1,000 characters. So a very, very short information, what you're planning to do and why, and who's going to join you on this journey. Excellence, that's going to be state-of-the-art description, and you going beyond that, that's a very short one, 2,500 characters. And the most intense one, quote unquote, as with 3,000 and 500 characters only, that's impact. So it's going to tell us the story, how you're going to play on the market, who's going to be your competitor, how are you going to overcome the obstacles and grow the ideas in Europe and hopefully globally. Implementation, this is interesting. We would like you to submit a 1-minute video. It's not an obligatory element, although I can tell you, and this is the insider's info, I can tell you that the videos are really important. It gives us this personal touch and feeling to the proposal behind the letters that we see all the time. So please take your phone. It doesn't need to be edited perfectly. It just needs to show us that there is engagement, a good active team of people who are really taking care of the proposal. So implementation, other than the video, you have a short description just to provide us with the basic info. Who's going to do that? In what set of work packages? What are the tasks before you? We need to understand that you see what are the actual steps in the process. The transversal criteria. This is something the European Commission is imposing us to ask you. There is only a selection from a drop-down menu, so there is nothing, no additional work requested from you. Statistical section, the only one that could be skipped at this point. Please, if you can, please select a few options that we ask you to. It's going to help us for the next calls to come up. Informed consent form, this is the part regarding the GDPR, data processing, sensitive information. So we just need you to click or tick one box and we're done here. Similar with the declaration of honor, and then processing of personal data, 2 ticks and we're done. So once all these sections are filled in, you just hit submit button, that's it. So in terms of effort, I was trying to come up with some numbers to give you an impression how easy it is, and this is really simple. So no more than 10,000 characters overall, which means that you're preparing 3 pages. You're allowed to attach additional documents if you want to, meaning sketches, projects, photos, even additional videos if you feel that this is going to bring up the proposal. Reading, I would strongly suggest please read the guides that we provided for you, especially the guide for applicants, especially the FAQ file. You might have some doubts, and many people probably ask the same question, so please read everything carefully. If there is something more that we could help with other than Stephen, than Jim, that your local contact points, Ledger has a help desk. So this is a dedicated email address. You can always reach through to us. And then there is a Ledger community. That's a space online that was created to gather all the potential applicants, maybe the finalists once we have them, the stakeholders from Europe who are interested in NGI areas. So the community also gives you an opportunity to ask questions about these open calls. What happens later? Well, the proposals are being evaluated, so we check them automatically for basic criteria, and then we hire experts from the NGI, Horizon, and other areas regarding your technical and technological descriptions. We're not gonna do it on our own. Then the project partners, in this case, there are only three Ledger consortium members, are gonna decide based on the short list who's going in, who's being dropped out. Then there is a jury day and a sub-grant agreement signature, which means that this is a legal document that Ledger will hopefully issue for you, for your proposal, and from then on, you're an official beneficiary. That's it. If you have other questions regarding the process or something was not clear, I would be happy to help as well, or pass it to my colleagues who run Ledger daily. So that was from me. I guess the questions are at the last part of this meeting, maybe after the pitching. So I'm here all the time. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you, Ola. So next, I don't know, do we have any pitches? I'm not aware of any from the audience.
Perhaps can you explain how people can raise their hand? Perhaps if you would like to give a pitch, you could raise your hand in the next to your name.
Or there's also a chat function if you just want to put a comment in the chat function, and the organizers can enable your microphone.
I do see a number of people have indicated that the question mark. Okay, so.
Well, there's quite a few questions came in there, Jim. I can see them, and
yes.
I think the way this is set up, only Trust IT can actually answer the questions online.
Yes, but I can run through them quickly and
yep.
try to answer the ones. Okay, so I'm sorry, I was, I guess, speaking too low. I hope you can hear me now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I wanted to read the questions if you'd like, but you couldn't hear me on the microphone. Would you like me to read you the questions now or later in the after this part of the webinar?
Okay, well, why don't we just see, is there anyone who would like to give a short pitch about their work, and what, whether maybe you would like to know whether this work would fit within any of these open calls?
Sorry, I can't hear you. Sarah, maybe can you hear what I think we're having some technical issue.
No, I can hear you. I can hear Jim fine here. What he was asking was if anybody wanted to give a quick pitch, but I don't see anybody coming in on the system here. There's nobody putting a comment on the chat or anything like that. So maybe we'll just run through the questions, which is what Jim was proposing.
Yes, we do have some questions. How many projects applied already? Does anyone have this information?
Well, I think I heard my colleague Paul down the line might be able to correct me, but I think we heard that in the NGI 0 PET and NGI 0 Discovery first calls, there was something on the order of 80. And, whether it was 40-40 or 50-30, I'm not really sure.
Okay, thank you.
That was my understanding. On the other ones, we would not know because the calls opened the 1st of February and they're closing the end of April. So that information would not be available to anyone until after that. So we really don't know any statistics on the ledger around the NGI Trust one.
Okay, thank you. And another question we have is from the concerns the timing. So, are there some? So the new tranche starts when the deadline for this one closes.
Yes. Yeah. That's specifically for NGI 0 PET and NGI 0 Discovery. Their next tranche starts the moment the deadline of the previous one closes.
Okay,
now it is a little bit confusing if someone is. I noticed this if you're looking on the European Commission website, not the NGI website, but the European Commission open call website. It is a little bit confusing because the day that the NGI 0 PET and NGI 0 Discovery close, it'll show as being closed. But then you have to look further down the list, and it's not immediately beneath them to show that they're opened again. So when you scroll down the list of all the different projects, you will find the new NGI 0 PET and the new NGI 0 Discovery open. Even though up the screen it's shown as closed. So maybe there could be some confusion on that on the overall European Commission open call website, but on the NGI website it's very clear that it's a running call. It just closes then opens, closes then opens, and then what they have said in their presentations is that basically this will keep going until the money is gone. So if they get front loaded with many excellent projects in the first 6 months, then the money could actually be spent in the first 6 months. But they don't really expect that to happen, but they said that that is a possibility. It's being run that way in those two particular projects. In the other projects, it's more structured. So you have, a 2-month open period from February to the end of April, and then you have evaluation, then you have the projects, and then in the next February, you'll have it opened again until the end of April, and it'll run in sequence like that.
I see there's also a question there from Paul on the in relation to the 10,000 characters that Ola mentioned. Is the budget included in the 10,000 characters, or is there a separate section for budget?
At this point, we do not need any actual budget, rather than there is a drop-down menu and a few fields and a few cells to fill in. These are in the system directly, so you're not expected to include any Excel sheets or any other budget allocation. So what we're asking is how much money you might need at this point, and how are you going to distribute the money. But this is an overview, so no actual categories like personnel, travel, other, nothing like that. So please do not take it as a part of this 10,000 characters. This is prepared kind of field for you just to fill in.
Okay, thank you. And we have one last question. Is there any information about the success rate?
I haven't heard any information about this, because I guess the calls, the first set of calls from the NGI Zero projects have just finished not too long ago.
I can tell from our experience, yeah, that's true that the ledger is going through its phase first, but with other calls, we can have anything from 100 proposals to the biggest one was 2,000 proposals. So this time I'm feeling like it's gonna be like double, triple digit number that's gonna be brought down to 16 at the end of the day. So you can see that this is highly competitive. And just one more tip: once you're preparing these proposals for us, when the evaluation process starts, it's very important who the team behind the proposal is. So please make sure you include people with complementary skills in a way, so that everyone has their own role, and then it's justified in a very logic way. As the team will be one of the most important elements here. Idea, of course, yes, but then who's going to run it? And we're not talking that bigger names or more prestigious partners would make it. No, it means that only the skills and the expertise and the contribution by the people involved will be analyzed. So please make sure you do not skip this part. This video thing, it's really important. So if you can work on that part, you should be fine.
Okay, thank you for that, Ola.
Thank you. Yes, we have a raised hand, and switching the microphone on for Santiago. So Santiago, if you want, you can ask your question.
Thank you. Hi. Well, thank you first for hosting this webinar. I had a question regarding whether if we have a team that has two different ideas that can complement each other, but which could coexist independently, could we apply with both of them, or could that be considered double funding?
Could you just repeat that again, Santiago? I heard.
Yes, sorry.
I heard half of it. Just repeat the scenario again.
Okay, imagine we have two different ideas that could coexist independently, but that could complement each other also. Could we apply with both of them, or could that be considered double funding and we had to choose which one of them to fund?
If I may take it from the ledger's perspective, I'm just looking at the guide for applicants here, and it says that in case that there's more than one proposal with any similar team members or the same organization, then only one will be funded. Also, because there is a limit with funding, and the European Commission is beginning more and more like this investigation, how much money was already distributed for a separate entity. So there will be a double check. Yes, you can't get funded with similar teams twice. Plus, there might be a question later on prior to sub-grant agreement, the question regarding your previous grants from this or another type of a project within the similar thematic area. So just one here, at least for Ledger.
We can find out about the other projects, Santiago, as well, and you know, and find out for sure if that's the similar situation with the other ones. And then there's another question here related to a UK partner. Can a partner from a UK university but Dutch nationality? That's unclear with the UK, especially if there's a 1 to 2 year Brexit extension. Maybe Stephen, would you know what the latest situation is? Have you heard anything in your meetings in Brussels about
there's been nothing as of yet. I mean, as things stand, the current situation is that the UK is eligible to participate. Now, look, obviously, we're in a state of flux with Brexit. We don't know what's going to happen before the end of the month. Obviously, if there's a hard Brexit, then the UK will cease to be a member state. And they won't even have associated country rights, because if it is a hard Brexit, it's a full pullout. But as things stand, yes, I know it doesn't really answer the question properly, but the Commission won't venture any other answer, I would expect, until such time as we know whether Brexit is actually happening or not. So it's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place on that one at the moment, until the situation becomes a little bit clearer.
Yes.
In Ledger, if I just may say something, yeah, true, the situation is very unclear. In Ledger, so far everything is going as planned, so everyone from the UK is eligible. However, there is a note again in the guide for applicants that the eligibility criteria, this initial set of criteria, must be complied with for the entire duration of this grant, of this program, which means that if the UK is leaving the European Union at some point, then the consortium or the applicant, the beneficiary, will not be eligible to receive EU funding after the actual Brexit. So it depends when it happens, of course. So far, everyone is welcome to apply, and eligibility criteria is valid for anybody, really. We'll see what happens. But yes, we do not have any indication, and we're not removing anyone from the United Kingdom as it is of now.
I mean, there is one little interesting point here in the question. It was mentioned that the person works for a UK university but has a Dutch nationality. So, there is a possibility, I believe, in the NGI 0 projects for individuals to apply for a project. And I don't believe I remember them saying there is a requirement at some point to become a legal entity. So there is a possibility that the person who has the Dutch nationality could potentially apply as an individual, even though they work for a UK university. But again, you'll have to read the guidelines just to make sure, or maybe check with the projects. I do know, as I mentioned before, in I believe it's both Ledger and in the NGI Trust projects, at some point, even though they do allow individuals to start in the beginning, but at some point they have to become a legal entity, and that's when you could have a difficulty if the legal entity is still the UK university.
In the mainstream Horizon 2020 program, where people are applying directly to the European Commission for funding, they do have what they call this natural person that in theory can be involved, but I've never actually seen it. It's always been participation of legal entities that I've seen in the mainstream commission calls. Now, this Cascade Funding is a little bit different. As Jim mentioned, it says individuals can apply, but I guess that's something that would need to be clarified with each of the individual projects.
Yes.
So I don't know if there are any other questions there that we've missed. I don't think so.
No other questions. Thank you.
So I think it might be just useful to remind people that the webinar has been recorded, and that the recording, I guess, Trust IT will inform all those that are registered on where they can access the webinar later on, and where they can get the presentations.
Yes, definitely. We will publish the registration and the recording on the webinar, and we will publish all the information, and we will notify you.
I'd like to just run through a couple of conclusion slides on how people can get more involved. So I can try my screen and see, hopefully it'll work this time, or if someone wants to share the final set of slides. Well, let's see, I might get it to work.
I've just shared your screen again there, Jim, so we can see it now.
Okay, very good. Okay, so there's a number of ways that you can get involved in the NGI program. One, you can register your organization on the NGI map, and so it can give you a good idea as to who's doing what, both here in Ireland and also elsewhere. And it's a fairly easy process that take no more than 10 minutes to register yourself. Then apply for the funding on the open calls, as we discussed today. The consultation process is an ongoing process, so please visit the consultation platform, and you can do searches, advanced searches in our knowledge base, and you can learn a bit more about the different topics, and look back through the history over the last 18 months or so as to how the community has built up on these topics, and also on new topics for 2019. There's a call at the moment, ICT24 2019, in which there are three new topics in development. So please visit the consultation website platform and become active there. And then just looking at a more long-term vision here, and where we're going in terms of Horizon Europe. So NGI is more or less encompassing, the applications and services, also the infrastructure, and the enablers and the drivers for these. And it fits within a whole number of areas: trust, resilience, decentralization, inclusion, and sustainability. And the NGI Forum is the annual event of NGI, and the next event will be held in September 2019 in Helsinki, not in Porto. The 2018 event was held in Porto, and the 2019 will be held in September. I believe it's the 25th of September. You can check the website for that in Helsinki, Finland. So let's make it happen together. Okay, I see a question flashing here. Did someone else ask a question?
No, I don't see any new questions coming in, Jim.
Okay. Okay, so that's all I have. I'd like to thank everyone, on behalf of the SpeakNGI.eu project. And thank you to Stephen and to Ola and to my colleagues at Trust.IT, Sarah and Christina.
Thank you, Jim. Of course, if you have any questions, feel free also to write the contacts that have been shared before, and please know that the presentation will also be available from the NGI.eu website on the webinar pages. And I wish you all a nice evening.
Thank
Yes,
you.
you too.
Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.